We'll talk to home educator Ken Quick. He's got some issues with a report from the province's Auditor General that says the government hasn't done a great job of making sure homeschooled kids are being educated properly. We'll also talk this half hour with Ken Quick. He's a Timberley-based home educator who's got some issues to take with an assessment of the Auditor General in regards to homeschooling in this province. The Auditor General says the province isn't doing a good enough job to make sure that school kids, that are kids who are homeschooled, are getting by properly, getting adequate schooling. Ken Quick takes exception to that. We'll hear more from him later this half hour. Well, it was late last year in November that the province's Auditor General suggested that Nova Scotia was not doing a good job of tracking whether homeschool children are being educated properly. Jacques Lapointe's report said a lack of oversight by the Education Department meant the government has no way of making sure that basic requirements are being met. Well, Ken Quick is taking exception to that report. He has written the Minister of Education to say so, and the Timberley home educator joins us on the phone this afternoon. Ken, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Rick.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. Well, the Auditor General, as I mentioned, has come out and has said that the province is not doing a good job of tracking whether homeschool children are being educated properly, and I guess you don't quite agree with that.
That's correct.
Tell us why.
Well, I want to be fair to the Auditor General in that he's an accountant by profession, and so he's used to facts, figures, statistics, and this sort of thing, and so when he looks at this, it's a small section within the Department of Education of two individuals that take care of the administration of homeschooling. He's looking at the fact that every fall we have to submit a proposed curriculum for our a planned curriculum for our children, and then in the springtime, early summer, we have to submit a progress report on our children, and he's concerned that the staff don't do any kind of detailed assessment on either of those.
Well, do they?
Well, not that I'm aware. I mean, they review them in a basic sense, but I don't want to be flippant about it, but I think his report is really a solution in search of a problem. There are numerous studies that have been done over the years, both in the United States and several ones recently in Canada, that show homeschoolers far excel their peers in public and private education, and not just academically, but things such as highest average income and lowest involvement in crime and mental health issues, highest civic involvement, highest charitable giving, volunteerism, and on and on. Any area that they look at, they're excelling. So basically his report, as I understand it, he's focused in on two areas that he says are a concern of his, which may be a problem, but he doesn't have any anecdotal or empirical evidence that they actually are problems. And the first one that he has is that there may be children out there who aren't enrolled in public, private, or homeschooling. And so his last four recommendations in the report are all about creating this tracking system and databases and linking in with the healthcare system to sort of catch these students that these phantom parents are sort of trying to hide from being educated, and there's no evidence of that whatsoever.
Well, and I don't think his report was calling into question the homeschooling. I think he was just calling for more oversight by the Education Department. Have more of a, I don't want to say control, but from what I gather reading his report is that he can't tell the difference between whether the kid has been homeschooled or publicly schooled, or the homeschool kid, how much he has learned. It's not, again, the issue with homeschooling, it's the issue with government oversight. Do you agree with that?
Well, that's what he's saying, but the problem that I have is, especially in light of his mandate being to make sure the government is making effective, important use of government funds. He's looking at, homeschooled students represent 0.67% of the population of school-age children.
Really? That's it?
And so he wants to find some fraction of that who may not be getting an education at all, and it's not really a homeschooling problem, frankly. That's people that are hiding their children who don't want them to get educated. I don't know who would that be, but they probably have bigger problems in the home, like abuse and neglect and stuff, and they would come to light through social services or something. So the issue of whether they're getting a good education, though, every parent, what he wants to do is to make sure every a home education plan is done by every parent for every child. So for example, there are 850 students registered for homeschooling last year. He wants all of those to be reviewed to see if they're appropriate for that child. I mean, it's a one-to-one relationship. Well, what kind of a staff would you have to have in order to properly assess whether that's an appropriate program? You'd have to know, well, is this a special needs child, and what's the home environment like, and what's the curriculum, and what are this child's areas of strength and weaknesses? You see, the benefit of homeschooling is, well, I think the number one reason is the relationship between the parents and the concern and care and love that the parents have for the children. But the second one is that we can tailor the training, the teaching, to the individual child. And so the person who's best able to do that is the parent. Like, no parent's going to let their child not progress, you see.
Well, we would hope anyway, yeah.
Right. Well, okay, if I step back for a second and say, well, what is it? What happens if this fear he has? Someone, say, reaches adulthood, 20 years old, and can't read or write or something. Well, the issue then is, what do we do about that? Well, we already have programs in place for people who, going through public or private or whatever, and can't read or write accurately. We have, adult education classes and GED equivalent programs and all that. And I'm saying he wants to create what I see as a bureaucracy of like 100 or more people to do all this analysis and testing and to try to find someone who may not. I'm saying it's cheaper. I'm thinking more as a taxpayer than a home educator here. It's going to be less expensive to just deal with these phantom people who may show up someday. But I mean, it's not typical that that's going to happen. And so my fear as a homeschooler is the only way that the Department of Education could afford to do what he's saying is not to allow there to be 850 individual programs. And he refers in there to having standard learning outcomes, which basically means, some kind of testing or assessment that's standardized. And if you make the test standard, then you have to make the curriculum standard. And as soon as you do that, you're going to destroy the benefit of homeschooling, which is the tailored program for the child. I mean, there's friends of mine, my children were a little bit ahead in math. At 15 years of age, my sons did a first-year university accounting course. Others are, so they may be ahead in some subjects by what we would call a year or grade or two. Other ones, they're weaker in some area, maybe a science or something, and so we work harder at that. We spend more time on that. If we have a standard thing on a year-by-year basis, we're going to cripple the ability to have the fantastic results that we have from home education.
Before I let you go, Ken, why do you homeschool your kids?
The cheesy answer is that we wanted them to get the best education possible. To be fair, my children went to a private school for the first few years, but my wife really noticed that that our relationship, how was your day? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing. The kind of thing. So she kind of missed the closeness of the relationship because she was home with them for the first 5 years. So that was part of it, and there were other things that we were disgruntled. There was some bullying going on at the school, and the typical things that happen when you get large groups of children together. So, there's many other factors as well, but, we've been really just thrilled with how that's turned out. My sons are 17 now. They're just finishing up a few things. We had them, since they're interested in college, we had them write the Canadian Achievement Test, which is sort of like the SAT in the States. And, they both got 90, one got 92, the other got 90%. So, but I'm not saying that that's what everybody should do, because some people some young adults who've been home educated want to start a business, and more of them, in fact, than the public or private school educated people in that. So, there's a wonderful benefit to that, and all the studies show that everything's working great. So what I'm saying is, like, if the problem comes to light, then we deal with it then. But we don't want to, like if we have Olympic athletes, we've been talking about the Olympics next year, we don't expect all our Olympic athletes to eat the same food and be on the same training program. No, they get a tailored, unique diet and exercise, and yes, we don't know whether it's going to work till they get to the Olympics, and we find out, but then we deal with it then, and they and their coaches make adjustments, and it's the same thing with the home educated. So, like I said, I have yet to meet the home educated child that fails unless there was some other thing going on there and the parents really weren't sincere. I mean, look at it, And a homeschooling family.
Well, I mean, and I know you've got a lot to say here, Ken, but I've got another guest standing by, and we're out of time here. But I get your message. I hear you loud and clear, and it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, now the government does based on the AG's report, if it does anything at all.
Yeah, we're hoping if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Don't fix it.
Attitude.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Ken Quick. Appreciate the time here.
Thank you so much, Rick. Have a good day.
You too, sir. Bye-bye. Ken Quick, and he's a Timberley-based home educator.